Christians, do you really want a biblically traditional marriage? Because if you say that you do, which I hear you say all the time, and I'm going to tell you at the end what you should actually be saying, because at the end is what you actually do desire. But when you say that you want a biblically traditional marriage, I don't think you've looked at marriage in the Bible to truly understand it. Because if you did, then you would not. So we're going to start with some of the light stuff and then move into the heavy stuff. So a traditional biblical marriage would mean that you want a marriage where the father or the eldest brother, if the father has passed on, decides who the young lady is going to marry based on the fact of the family connections that they have and the amount of money that the other person is going to pay for the bride price. So what you're saying is that you want an arranged marriage that is dictated by the senior man in your family. Is that what you want? The biblically traditional marriage? You want the biblically traditional marriage that says that you are to marry your cousin, your half sister, because Abraham married his half sister. Jacob married two cousins, his two first cousins. Is that what you want? You want that kind of marriage where you're marrying through incest? Because that's a biblically traditional marriage that we can find throughout the Bible. When you say you want a biblically traditional marriage, are you saying that you want a slave wife? Your Bible in Leviticus and Deuteronomy says that, hey, a father can sell his daughter into slavery, especially if he's in debt, but he can sell his daughter into slavery as a wife to another man. If that man does not find her promising, then he still has to keep her. And then he go off and he can marry another woman. It's also saying that when you're being conquered and a Israelite sees you and says he wants to marry you, then he can take you as a slave captive wife and make you into his slave wife. Now, it also says when we're dealing with people like Abraham and we're dealing with people like Jacob, that if your husband, that the wife has a slave, handmaid, when we're talking about Hagar, we're talking about Bilhah here, and she wants to have a baby, but she can't, she's struggling with the baby, that she can give her slave wife, her handmaiden, to her husband, and that becomes his slave wife. You know, and Hagar was kicked out to the curb, and your God ordained it because your God then came to Hagar and said, go on back, be a good slave. Then they kicked her out again, and then some angels came and said, don't worry about it, we'll dig your well, you'll be all right. So it is ordained by your God. But then, of course, Jacob, he has two slave wives. The 12 tribes of Israel, the overwhelming majority of them come from the two slave wives and not from the two cousin wives. So when you want that biblically traditional marriage, you're saying that you want slave wife marriage. When you say you want the biblically traditional marriage, then what you're also saying is that if a woman is not a virgin at the time frame that she is married, then she should be stoned and killed. Because when a man marries the woman and finds out that she's not a virgin, and the token of her virginity proves to be false, then the woman is taken to the gates, and you'll find this in Deuteronomy 22. It's taken to the gates, and then she's stoned to death. But you also have to have proof of your virginity by having a cloth up under your poom poom when you are having your first sex, which is the marriage. And if there is blood there, then yeah, your husband gets beaten. He has to pay the father 100 pieces of silver, and then you still have to be married to that man. When you say you want a biblical traditional marriage, one of the worst forms of that biblical traditional marriage is that of rape. Because your Bible says that in Deuteronomy 22 again, that when a man rapes a woman who is not betrothed to another man, that he must pay the father 50 pieces of silver, and then the young lady has to marry her rapist, and he cannot ever divorce her. You're also saying that you want that. When you say that you want a biblical traditional marriage, then what you're saying is that you want polygamy. Because polygamy is throughout your entire Bible. Whether we're talking about David, we're talking about Saul, we're talking about Abraham, we're talking about Jacob, we're talking about Esau. There's so much polygamy. We're talking about Solomon, a whole bunch of polygamy. Even in Deuteronomy 21, it says if a man has two wives, and then goes on to talk about his favoritism towards one wife or the other. So polygamy is good to go. And even in your New Testament, because I know y'all are going to say that, in your New Testament, it talks about the fact that only priests and bishop and deacons are not to have more than one wife. But if you can afford it and you got it situated, more power to you. Or do you want a Paulinian biblical marriage? Whereas for Paul, he was saying that if a man cannot help himself and desire sex so much that he cannot save himself and keep himself pure so that he can be prime and focus only on God, because Paul believed that Jesus was coming back before he died, that a man is then only supposed to marry a woman because he can't control his sexual energies. And so therefore it's better for him to marry than to burn with the lust of sex. So you only want a man who's marrying you because he just want to make sure he has sex with you? That's the kind? Oh no, I know what y'all mean when y'all say y'all want a biblically traditional marriage, because y'all like the book of Ruth, and y'all think Ruth and Boaz all the time. So the Ruth and Boaz story, interesting story, isn't it? Because in the Ruth and Boaz story, then basically what you have is a situation where Ruth decides she wants to stay with Naomi. Boaz see her out there gleaming from his fields and say, damn, pretty brown girl. That sundress be catching her right. That sun catches that sundress. Y'all know what I'm talking about. When the sundress catch him in the right spot, Boaz was checking that out. So what did Boaz do? He made sure she got some good wheat, got some good stuff. So you want a sugar daddy, is what you're saying. And in order to get that sugar daddy, you got to go lay down at the bottom of his feet after he done got drunk in the wine press, and go in there and lay at the bottom of his feet and give him that poom poom. And then Boaz, knowing that he can't necessarily take her as his wife on the regular, has to then trick his elder cousin, brother, whatever they were to him, in order for him to be able to marry Ruth. So you want that sugar daddy give up the poom poom while he drunk, trick the family traditional marriage, is what you're saying. Because that's what a biblically traditional marriage are. They fit into all those categories. Now, you're going to talk about love, and you're going to talk about submission, you're going to talk about man providing, you're going to talk about all those kind of things. Well, those are not biblically traditional marriages by itself. What you're really talking about, and here's that end part, what you're really talking about is that you want a 2024/1950s marriage. You want the marriage to a woman who is going to dress like a Puritan, who is submitting to her man, because, you know, Paul said, women be quiet and don't speak in the church. If you have any questions, ask your husbands at home. You want that quiet woman who just takes care of the household, takes care of the kids, gives you all the poom poom you want, take all your bullshit and don't complain about it. And then you get to walk around like you the man, but you got to be the man. But in order to be that man, you got to be that guy that also provides everything and should not look for your wife to work, which is why I say that 2024, because you want your woman to work just as hard as you do outside the house, but then come home and do all the damn work inside the house while you just laze about thereafter, because you don't need to protect the house every day. It's not like unless you're living in the wrong place, you don't need to do all that. So that's what you really want. You want a woman that works the same amount of hours you do outside the house, cooks, cleans, take care of the kids, sex you up, feed your ego. That's what you want. That's the 2024/1950s wife that y'all really want, who are based on the Christian dogma that has changed based on the culture that they had in the 1950s and the culture that we have today. Yeah, I don't want a biblically traditional marriage, because it's filled with a whole bunch of bullshit. And I don't want a 2024/1950s marriage, because it's filled with a whole bunch of bullshit as well. So y'all have a great day. And remember always, you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. Good journey, good vibrations.